Well, more now on our top story, the countdown to a decision on Perth's snap three-day lockdown. The state's Premier, Mark McGowan, expected to make a captain's call today on restrictions for 2 million people. For more, we're joined by President of the AMA, Dr Omar Khorshid, who is in Perth. A very good morning to you, Doctor. No new local cases yesterday. Do you think you're in the clear?
Look, it's great news that there's only been 2 community-acquired cases so far as part of this outbreak. But if there's been 2, there could certainly be more, and I don't think we can say we're in the clear yet. All will come down to what comes through in terms of results today, but we can expect some form of restrictions going into next week.
OK, so even if there are no new cases reported today, you think that the lockdown in some capacity will continue or should continue?
Well, should's a different question, but I think it will. And, the public have demonstrated their support for Premier McGowan's very hard-line approach. And the reality is that we can't be certain that there hasn't been transmission until more time has passed, because we know the incubation period for this virus can be up to 2 weeks. So it will be a little more time before we're absolutely certain that we're in the clear here.
Do you think the lockdown was necessary?
Well, there's definitely other approaches, and I'm sure Sydney-siders would be scratching their heads that you'd see such an extraordinary lockdown after only a couple of cases. But the reality is the Premier has been extremely popular because of his hardline stance, both on borders and now with our second lockdown. And West Australians are comfortable that if we have this small amount of pain, that we will see a more rapid return to normal. If there is something to be upset about, I think, for West Australians, it's the fact that it happened in the first place, the failure again of hotel quarantine, and that's where really the questions need to be answered.
Does Mark McGowan have a point that hotel quarantine, he wants it moved out of the cities? Is that something you agree with?
It's not so much where it occurs, but how it occurs. And there's no doubt that these facilities are not built for this purpose. They're not perfect. They have issues with ventilation, and there's issues with how each of our states have been running their quarantine. They could be better. There are things that they can do right now to make them tighter and safer. But at the end of the day, we agree with Premier McGowan that more specific and purposeful facilities should be made available in each state and territory, because we're going to be relying on quarantine, we think, for at least the rest of this year, and there's a good chance it'll be going well into next year as well.
Wow. I mean, that's hard to hear, isn't it? This idea that we'll still be dealing with this potentially into next year.
The reality is that we have a disaster going around the world. You just look at India, and that means more mutations are going to be coming, and we're not going to be absolutely certain as to how effective our vaccines are for quite some time yet. So I think we need to be realistic here. We need to be planning for a future that does include ongoing border restrictions. And also, I think we need to be ready for the next pandemic so that we're not caught on the hop.
And we need to get our vaccination program back on track?
The vaccinations have been super effective at most of the known strains, and we're getting more and more data as time goes on. It is, at this stage, the absolute best way out of this, and there's no chance Australia will be opening our borders until we get our population vaccinated. So that's our challenge for right now and for the rest of the year.
It is sobering. Dr Omar Khorshid, thanks for joining us this morning. Very early in Perth. Thank you.
The blame game over Perth's latest outbreak has begun, with the WA Premier demanding the nation's entire hotel quarantine program is scrapped, as you just heard. But the federal government is standing firm, declaring the system remains the best option. For more, Dr Stephen Duckett from the Grattan Institute joins us now from Melbourne. Doctor, good morning to you. First up, can I just say this? It's been revealed Perth's patient zero was granted permission to travel to India for a wedding. If we're going to be serious about this pandemic, when we had people who couldn't cross a border between New South Wales and Queensland to attend their own family's funeral, how can we allow this to happen? It just defies belief that we're still allowing people to travel overseas for a wedding and then come back into the country. Is it time we shut the border to India?
Well, I think we effectively have, haven't we? They've cancelled all the flights in from India, and that's appropriate. You've seen the footage. India is in a terrible state. Other countries are helping, which is good, but we really need to be super cautious about any travel from any country which has a high degree of COVID circulating in the community.
So given how heightened we are and how alert we are in this country between our own borders, how is it, or how do you view the decision to allow someone to go to India for a wedding?
Well, the whole point of border controls has been that people can go overseas as long as they're not going to come back in forever, basically, while COVID is circulating. And so it is a beggar's belief that somehow or other someone went over there and was allowed to go over there for a wedding. I know weddings are important, yes, but that wedding led to a lockdown in Perth.
I just can't understand how anyone in a government position or a position of authority allowed that to happen. We've also seen the number of people who have returned from India inside our hotel quarantine facilities and other quarantine facilities. I think the number is at 40% infected are from India with COVID. I mean, this is a system that we are continuing to test and to push, and it will break.
So what's interesting is we've learnt a lot about how COVID is transmitted over the last 12 months. When we were, back in the early days, COVID was transmitted by droplets, and so if you're 1.5 metres away, that was safe. That's not the knowledge now. COVID is aerosol transmission, much more dangerous and much more able to spread. And what's happened is we haven't changed our policies, even though the knowledge has changed. So we're still doing hotel quarantine, which is in a sense assumes this droplet transmission that if you put them in the room they can't transmit, where in fact we know it transmits in the corridors, and we've seen hotel quarantine spread. So, we haven't updated our policies in the light of this new knowledge, which is, really crazy, actually.
There have been plenty of really experienced people around who have suggested places. I know the Wagners outside of Toowoomba have a place there. There's one in the Northern Territory. There's one that's been proposed in Victoria. And still it doesn't get off the ground because I think the federal government is of a mind that they can control things, that this is the best possible situation. But do you agree with that?
I think it's political. I think the Commonwealth Government doesn't want to have a bar of hotel quarantine because it knows it can go wrong. It's really, really hard. Every state has had breaches of hotel quarantine, and the Commonwealth just wants to wash its hands and not step up to the plate. But in reality, in Victoria, we've got Puckapunyal Army Base, which is sitting there. People could be transported easily from the airports to Puckapunyal. We've got Avalon. And we could set up temporary facilities in 6 weeks, and we should have done that when these ideas were floated back in February.
I agree with you 100%. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Pleasure, Karl.
It's been dubbed Dob Seeker, the government's employment hotline, encouraging bosses to dob in people for rejecting work. The program's been running for less than a month, but it's been criticised for demonising those without a job. Joining us now is Employment Minister Stuart Roberts. Thanks for your time.